thundering into our second report of the Drylands, it's time we got introduced to Zenith Tigrex. Tiggy is a classic. From his threatening introduction in Poké Village to the various vociferous variants that graced our screens, he is a mainstay. Flagships tend to be hard to remove from various rosters, and this quadrupedal bastard is no exception, being present in every generation in some form or another. So it's no surprise that we slapped him full of the Zenith juice and got his souped up debut super early. Let's see if that worked. Zenith Tigrex's areas to fight him in are the 2nd Gen Desert, the Snowy Mountains, and a brief reprieve in the Polar Sea. Generally, it's agony to meet this guy on the mountain unless you get lucky, otherwise you need to either learn how a nearcaster works or suffer through tracking through multiple zones. Anyways, the level design of the Snowy Mountains notwithstanding, it fucking sucks, we're here to talk about the beast of the day. Zenith Tigrex is in some ways an epitome of the common opinion of what the Zenith classification represents. It's very much a Tigrex that got buff and had some extras slapped on. My opinion is that these razor-sharp claws go really hard, even though they're so gaudy in their presentation. You'd be forgiven if you saw this as a fan-submitted Tigrex with the fingerless gloves that used to be part of the course. It's a Tigrex with metal knuckle dusters and additional fins. That's it really, it's pretty simple, there's not much else to say about the design here. It's incredibly clear what the enhanced body part is. What we really care about is the fight, so let's get started. Tigrex was an early beast, and the first introduction of Frontier's evil version of Bleed, which we've seen in our coverage of Hujikiki. Bites and spins will be augmented by additional bleed explosions, and you'll see airwaves fly off of these attacks that will lacerate you all the same, adding some distance to Tigrex. Now as a reminder, the bleed status in Frontier cannot be mitigated by crouching. You have to have a special item known as bleed balls, and even if you remain still and don't attack, you will still have your health sapped down. It can decimate your health bar in a matter of seconds. The only real way out of some of these attacks is to distance yourself and position accordingly and bring the aforementioned bleed balls, because my goodness, Tiggy can be rotten with some of these hitboxes. There's normally a decent amount of praise warranted for the Zeniths in general, especially from me, but for Tigrex, there's some pretty egregious shit going on. I normally try to structure these videos in a certain way, but in this case the entire monster is sort of carried by this bleed and the hitboxes, so we'd be sort of tackling it all at once. Tigrex itself is woefully weak in terms of health, and will melt under any sustained damage, so it's really more of a race of you killing him before he kills you. If we're talking about the various attacks, there is this triple jump that sort of clouds your vision with his entire body, and the additional shockwaves added to the bites can be really frustrating because they stick around for some time. These lingering hitboxes aren't just limited to the bites, after various charges and jumps you can have some issues there. Not only that, but you'll notice that as soon as you're struck by bleed for the first time, Tigrex goes into his rage mode in like a shark frenzy. I actually think that's quite a little nice feature there. Just one little slip up and immediately you get punished with rage mode for it. Anyways, put simply, if you run a weapon that doesn't have a guard point or parry, you need to be a lot more careful and a lot more active in the way that you play against Zenith Tiggy. He can be trivialized with a guard or two, with certain weapons especially, such as, oh I don't know, Magnet Spike or Switch X? I've never heard of a hunt being especially easy with those before, of course. Nevertheless, those weapons that aren't blessed with a parry are going to be a little bit more frustrated with this matchup. Might be worth branching out into a different weapon. In terms of the rest of the move roster, however, the main trick and one that's going to save your skin many times is to notice which claw is leading which attack from Tigrex. Much of your positioning, dodge direction, and other responses will be in reaction to which side of the body does what, so pay serious attention to how this angry Roomba moves. Our first attack in this aspect is the pin. Tigrex will jump back, dive forward, and attempt to pin you. Rolling towards as it jumps is a good way to deal with this, as it'll sail over you, and if you get caught you'll be subjected to a multi-attack. You'll get swiped by the claws multiple times before it's finished off with a big old damaging roar. It's a relatively simple attack, and the animation where it jumps back is unique so you won't confuse it for anything else. You've got more than enough time to prepare yourself for this. However, what's up next is probably the deadliest and jankiest attack in the regular arsenal, and this can be done from either static or after a charge. Tigrex will slam the ground with a claw, generating a slow shockwave of earth with significant lingering hitboxes. If you're caught by this, you're juggled up into the air with no iframes, primed and ready for the follow-up air slash that will send you to the ground with bleeding inflicted. Once again, take note of which claw slams into the ground first, as you'll want to dash into the opposite claw to that, and then dodge through the follow-up slash once again. 2 rolls here. At close range it is incredibly hard to react to, so don't be discouraged if you get caught a few times, but if you see it coming, getting some distance away can give you more time to react, especially by using the Extreme Style's ability to sprint with your weapon out. You'll be rewarded at the end of this move with a significant taunt animation from Tigrex, which always happens regardless of the level, allowing you to go ham on the arms for a bit. So again, learning this attack is fundamental. On the topic of paying attention to the claw, the spin move is another where this also applies. As we said before, with the spin, airwaves are again shot out to add distance to the attack, so even at range you have to be wary. To counter this attack, you need to be aware that whichever claw draws back first indicates the hemisphere that won't be affected. If you're looking top down from Tigrex and he pulls the arm back, if you imagine his head at 12 o'clock, it will be the numbers 12 through 6 that won't be affected by the air blast. So moving towards that side first means that you can dodge the first round of wind blades, and then roll through the second. Alternatively, if you stay directly in front of Tigrex, you can roll one singular wind blast and continue on. A final note to make is the side tackle. If Tigrex is aggressive towards you and then turns his side towards you, he will go for this attack. The tell for this is super easy, but you do have to prepare to roll through it after a slight delay when he jumps back for the first time. Now this is it for the base 200 level, aside from some pretty basic Tigrex behaviours like the charge and damaging roar, but that's all the stuff we know at this point. We're going to move up to the higher levels now. At G rank 400 there are two significant changes. Firstly is that he now does the spin twice in a row. This completely removes the option to roll the center blade as it happens too fast for you to chain rolls. Your realistic option here is once again to avoid the first set of blades by paying attention to the claw and then roll the second one, as you'll have to favour one hemisphere depending on how Tigrex starts. The second edition is a brand new move. After a short wind up of inhaling air, Tigrex blasts a roar out in a funnel. The observant of you will notice that Iceborne's Brute Tigrex borrowed this attack for its own, so it's nice to see the genesis of it here. When this roar first comes out, there's a shockwave around the Zenith, so even if you're at its sides you'll still want to roll or block, and then Tigrex will then sweep the beam around in a clockwise direction, so you'll have to evade through that wind tunnel. Be careful when it does swing back around however, as even if you've rolled it before, the tunnel can hit you multiple times, so don't get complacent. That is all for G rank 400 however. On G rank 600 there are no changes aside from stats, so let's take a look at some of this gear. The armour itself is nothing really to write home about, however the weapons themselves are fairly impressive. They often favour the Zenith skill for earplugs, meaning taking one of these will help for any Zenith that likes to scream a lot, and chief of all these is the hammer. They literally took this bastard's hand and stuck it on a stick, and it looks amazing. It's not only that, but it's one of the super long hammers that you get, so the range allows you for much easier super pounds and a much easier way to get out of danger. They're also raw weapons which tend to have higher raw totals compared to their elemental cousins. G rank 800 now, and it only changes one significant detail. The pin attack that we mentioned before is spammed pretty constantly, only it isn't a pin anymore. Instead, if you're hit, you're held up in the air like you would do with the ground burst, and then spiked by an AoE roar in the air with no way to defend yourself. You can roll in much the same way before of course, but be aware that regardless of if this attack hits or not, the roar will still happen, so you'll need to time a second roll as soon as possible. It is a very simple change, but it is one that does catch you by surprise if you're not prepared. If you stay consistent and manage to rack up the damage however, you'll be rewarded for breaking the claws with a complete lack of wind blades. This cripples the range of Tigrex, and the bleed potential as well. It's so significant that it really does make the fight so much easier. The unfortunate thing is that because Tigrex is so weak, it'll often be at death's door by the time you break both claws, but there's a small window there for you to have some fun. You really see how this guy relies on these extra new metal claws, and how I mentioned that the bleed carries the fight. It really does. Remember to bring those Zenith's weapons of course for a 50% boost to your part break damage. But all things considered, and all of those little attacks there, all of those little experiences, you'll feel some frustration. I certainly do find fighting Tigrex without a parry weapon very annoying. The ground slam is one of the most heinous attacks ever, and some of those hitboxes can be very suspect. But that's the guy, that's Zenith Tigrex. I think the design's pretty cool, there's some cool animations, but outside of that, it's a solid middle of the road guy. Not a complete bastard like Zenith Hugi and not a masterpiece like Plesioth. 6 out of 10. Well done Tigrex. That's all for this one. Cera out.